some things we might,
Okay.
he's not as familiar with some of the stuff as the
Great.
other guy, so just need to make sure we loop in some of the stuff, especially when it comes to like the Accelerate product. I think he would like to hear about that some.
Okay. I'm supposed to be able to remember all this, guys, so help me. I think that the most challenging part to show up from out of town and be up here is everybody thinks I'm a specialist, which I am to a certain extent, right? And what we were talking about last night as we sat around thinking about this, I've been doing this for a long time. I remember the first time that somebody at Werner Turf asked me what I knew about centipede grass, and I said I saw the name one time in a class I had in college. And I think Kenny Howe about crapped his pants at that point, thinking that, we're talking to a guy who doesn't even know what we're doing. And it didn't.
Did you tell him where you're from?
Mars. Fort Wayne, Indiana is where I'm at. So it's all cool season grasses up there, not warm season grasses. But the funny part was, the reason I was going that way is, when people ask questions like that, and their immediate assumption is, this guy doesn't know squat about what we're doing. The first and most important thing about what we're doing here as agronomy and agronomists is realizing that it's not like it's hidden away. You might say that to somebody, it's like, well, we got to spray the grass, and that's what books are for. And you don't always just learn from books, do you? If you've been out there and realizing that, practical experience on the farm doing this kind of stuff is as important, if not more important, because there's an art and a science to growing anything. And I think it wasn't a matter of 2 to 3 years before we kind of put the whole idea of growing centipede grass in a whole new light. Because I always said, it's funny, the two people you talk to in life about growing something is the guy who's at the university who's wrote all the books on it because he thinks he knows everything. And he's probably never grown a stick of that stuff before in his life because all he ever did was just write the book. And then you go out to the guy who lived with it all his life and maybe even half broke because that's what he's done all his life. But he knows that crop upside down. And he is an insight. And that's exactly what happened to the centipede grass. We had talked to the people who said they knew all about it because they're like, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And I walked out one day to a guy who was an alcoholic, and I think that morning he was still recovering from the night before. But he had a little farm market, and he was giving food out to people, and he's standing out there, and he's got size 13 feet, and he's barefoot. And I said something to him about, there's an interesting field of centipede grass you got growing there, and he said, centipede grass. He said, that ain't nothing but an effing weed. I'm like, elaborate. He says, you try to take care of that, I said, it'll spit in your face. He said, just leave it alone long enough. He said, it's the prettiest grass you've ever seen. He says, all I do is just kind of leave it alone, and I'll go get it. And then it hit me. Of course, all the guys at the university are saying, well, you have to fertilize it. When you fertilize it, but it seems like it sets it backwards, and then it hit me. If you put so much fertilizer to the soil because it's a weed, if you know anything about weeds, if you ever feed weeds, they don't grow any roots. They grow, they take advantage of the situation you give them, and they grow and get above the crop, and that's what they do, and they make weed seeds like crazy. But they don't grow too many good weeds, or too many good roots when you feed them. And it just clicked when he said, that's a weed, and I'm like, just like that, it's like, I got it. Because if we take away the soil fertilizer, are we really going to grow the grass? The answer is yes, but are we going to grow it fast? No. So if we have to take away the soil fertilizer, what would we do to replace the fertilizer? Any ideas?
Make it more efficient taking up what's there.
How are we going to do that? If we go away from spread dry fertilizer, how are we going to make it take up fertilizer? How are we going to get fertilizer out of it?
Root exudates.
Well, that's one thing. That's a good point, because that is a real big part of it, but it's not the only point, is it? Because we've all been doing it. We get out the sprayer and we spray right over the top. Because if we spray limited amounts over the top of that centipede grass and it sucks it up, it's not like we're spreading all kinds of lots of heavy fertilizer on the soil, because see, it's the heavy fertilizer on the soil that's messing with that plant. So we come back in there and we tease it with just a little bit of food and a little bit of energy and a little bit of fertilizer. And it says, good grief, I don't know where this came from, but I think I'll store this away for a rainy day. And what does it do? It grows roots. So just like that, after he just made that weird comment, just like that, it hit me. And I'm sitting there thinking, we have how many PhDs at Georgia, Alabama, and Florida that's been working on grass for decades, and they couldn't look out there and come up with that? What kind of educational system we got going in this country? You know, it's fascinating to just stop and think about what kind of issues that people have, whatever in their mind, got closed off to the whole idea of actually moving anything different in a direction than everything that we haven't done in the last 15 years. Just got to keep doing it the same way because we'll figure it out one day. And they didn't. And so the fun part about what I'm getting at is we have started doing lots of things very similar to that in the last several years to help people grasp where this thing's going, because it's a train that's on a little different track. How many of you feel 100% comfortable with just what I went through and said, oh, I got it figured out now, I'll go out and do it tomorrow? I think that's the hardest part in all this. Is like, you know, that some of these are baby steps, some of them are big. The point I'm making is I've been doing this now for down here more than 25 years. And when people come to this, they're like, he's got some interesting ideas, but I don't think that stuff's going to work. And I get it, because just because I walk in here and start talking doesn't mean that it has to. But the beauty of it is I'm not 35 anymore either. You know, the hair's falling out. I'll be 65 this spring. So the fun part about it is we have trimmed out a lot of other things that people might call mistakes or trip-ups in the last 25 years. So when Taylor says, if you got a question, you should ask it. It might be, in cases, I might say, oh, I'm kind of embarrassed to ask it in front of the crowd. Well, if that's the case, fine, then come up afterwards. But don't sit there and say to yourself, well, that's really not that important, because if it is in your head, more than likely it's in somebody else's head too. And ask it. Because this isn't so much, as we're talking, and Taylor, I know, said that to you. This isn't as much as me standing up here and just trying to puke all over you and give you all kinds of wonderful new ideas. It's about understanding that this is a very serious time in history. And we have some really, really awesome opportunities to right some wrongs in the way we've done some things in the past and make outstanding grass in a very, very short period of time. That's the fun part about it. Kenny's done it. Kenny does it, still does it every day, you know, with even some of the, you know, competition competitors. But the thing is, what I want you to understand is you shouldn't fear any of this, because we've got a lot of it already figured out. That's the time impact that we're talking about in 25 years. There are things that we do, and we do them purposefully. It's not just a suggestion to say, okay, well, let's just go out here and we'll try this thing and this thing and this thing. We're going to leave these 4 things out. You can, and sometimes if you leave them out in the right condition, you might get away with it, but you're not going to do it long term. Because part of this is helping you understand that there's a soil piece to this, and in the soil you've got living microbes, and that's where the plants put their roots, and there's an interaction between the two. Then you've got a dry portion of your program that you're going to implement. You still have to get a volume of material out there to get some certain things done. And then you've got a foliar aspect to that. And most people would say, well, the foliar aspect is there because of the fertility. And there is some truth to that. But the foliar aspect is also there because you need to influence the physiology, the way that plant grows. You have the opportunity to tell it, I want you to do this. I want you to put on roots. And by the way, since you're an energy conversion machine, that's what every plant is harvesting sunlight and turning it into energy that we call mostly sugars, that starts everything working in that plant, and then it uses all of its biology to figure out how to take those sugars and turn them into other things. If you tell it, I want you to start putting on roots, it receives a signal, and immediately it's got a choice to make. You've already turned it on and said, you're going to do this. Because that's a hormone, it can't ignore you. But it's got to come up with what to put that root on that plant. What's it got to come up with?
Energy.
Energy. Most people would, first and foremost, in this business, they say, well, fertilizer. Not fertilizer, energy. So if you go out there and tell it, I want you to start putting on roots, and you happen to include in the same spray some energy, which in this case would be sugars or some folic acids or maybe some humic acid, you've already enabled it to do something. And overnight, you're going to see something happen. Because you've already told it what to do. And this is the fun part about where we're headed with this. When we understand that once we start telling these plants what to do, and the most important thing is not to go out there and throw something that interrupts the program that we just set, because oftentimes we do that with herbicides. And it's not a bad thing because we have to put the herbicides out there. But just knowing that might say, okay, if we're going to put out the herbicides, maybe we should put the herbicide out first. Let the herbicide get in the plant, because there are things we can put in the spray that will tell the plant, we understand that you've been told to shut down your amino acids because you have a herbicide on you. By the way, we're going to let the weeds suck this stuff in, and then we're going to turn you back on because we're going to throw some amino acids here in your spray. It's no different than being a doctor or a veterinarian or a nutritionist. People just did not realize that you can do this with plants just like you do with any other living thing. And this is the fun and also challenging part about it, because I'm not asking you to sit in here and listen to all this and walk out today as a specialist. If you want to, you're welcome to. You can take this with you. You can sit here and study it all day long if you want to. You can do these meetings. You'll enjoy those looks I get like now. Like, what's that going to talk about? But that's the fun part about it, because wisdom is knowledge in pieces that gathers together and goes in a direction. And that's where the science and the art come together. Because, if you talk to somebody who's done this a few more years than you have, it's like he seems to know more about what's going on. Well, he better if he's been paying attention. Right? So.
Got a question back here.
Yeah.
So are you now recommending that you don't put fertilizers with any of your products? Like, would you rather put out the herbicide first, and then what interval is it looking like until you're putting some product back on that?
Well, that was an example, because there are different examples that you could use. Because when you get into the really low AI stuff, the stuff that goes out at a third of an ounce or an ounce to the acre or some of that stuff, normally what it's doing is it's interrupting some physiological process. And depending what that physiological process is, you can also include stuff with it at the same time. And then some that you'd be better off to kind of, give it a 24 to 48 hour period and then come back and put something else on. There are some like that. And that's where some of this identifying some of these issues is going to come in. Because you guys may all be doing something completely different on each individual farm. I don't know. I don't know, how it's structured. But if that's the case, it's a quick and easy phone call. It's like, hey, I'm getting ready to put on oxidizon. Should I be putting out, this is all probably all dry, or do they have a liquid version that you put on? We got a liquid version. So it's like, well, I'm going to put that on. If I'm going to put on this SG Advanced, should I be putting it on with or without? That's the kind of questions I'm talking about. Rather than going out there and realizing that, because sometimes you got to be careful. What you don't want to do is you don't want to put the antidote to the herbicide in with a herbicide at the wrong time, because if you do, how the weed's going to die. Because I have people all the time, it's like, I need to save a trip. I'm like, you don't want to save a trip. Go spray this stuff, and a couple days later we'll come back and do this if we need to. Those are the kind of things I'm talking about. Now, those don't come easy, right? I mean, that's a lot of learning, but that's what this is all about.
Can we give y'all a list of common chemicals that we do?
Sure.
Put out, and then see if it's
Right. Yeah,
that thought kind of popped in my mind the other day when we were spraying. It was last year, and we were doing the Turf Pro, and I remember Taylor said we could mix some of them up, and they'd be fine to do a jar test.
Mm-hmm.
But that thought went through my mind, like, if I'm spraying these weeds right here, and I'm also putting this product out there, that's going to help it uptake nutrients, and I wonder if it would even work as good.
Right, and as long as it's in there to help it to uptake nutrients, and there's nothing for an antidote, it's the smart thing to do, because see, the weeds can't withstand the herbicide, and you're encouraging your crop to withstand the herbicide to a certain extent. And that's why I'm saying there might be a little one every once in a while, and there's kind of a clicker. It's like, oh, we probably should pay attention to this combination. But that's an easy thing. And if we had that list, we could figure some of that stuff out.
Are you saying mostly with combinations with say your products in with whatever we're spraying, simazine, 2,4-D, any type of herbicide? It'd be pretty simple. You just don't mix it together and you try to put your herbicides out 48 hours in front. Would that kind of jump your...
There's no question that it would have some impact. A lot of them, like if you were using metribuzin with some of the stuff we're talking about, it's not really going to impact it that much.
Yeah.
But some of the other stuff that you might go out there with, like for instance, if you were putting amino acids in there, and let's see, what's the amino acid synthesis stuff that you guys would be using for? Well, any of the old sulfonylureas.
Yeah.
Good example. If you put amino acids in there with sulfonylureas, you just put part of the antidote in there.
That's right.
And so, it teases that weed into getting a little hope. Whereas you don't want that weed to have any hope. You want those grass to have all the hope it can get, but you don't want the weed to have any hope. So certain ones like that you would want to consider. Because we don't want to make this thing any harder than it is. We don't want to be making all these extra trips in the world, do we? We want to make sure that the trips that we're making are going to be valuable and that we're not stubbing our toe. Yeah.
It's kind of Roundup Quickspro with the dicot and the glyphosate. It's perfectly matched if you go to the box store. But to save money back in the day, I would mix my own. The dicot would come in there and kill it, but it wouldn't allow it to get the glyphosate to work.
That's right. It's too quick a kill.
Yeah. So you get the burn down and the weeds come back.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. And, I think that's, again, because we're not really being told in many cases what was dicot and what is Roundup. When you're not told that, it's like, well, this is just an easy pass. Boom. I mean, one's going to knock it down and the other's going to keep killing it. But boom. Right. And we see that a lot, where even with paraquat on the crop side, most people think if you spray paraquat in the middle of a 95-degree afternoon, and when you're already turning around and coming back the other way where you just sprayed, you see that weed going down, it's like, I've killed that sucker. No, you have not. Because the best time to spray paraquat is at midnight or after. Because as dark as it is, what drives the reaction for dicot and paraquat is the sunlight. The sunlight is what kills the plant. But if it kills it too fast, it goes all the way back to the buds, to the main stem, but it won't go into the buds because it's killed everything so quickly, it's killed all the cell structures that it won't deposit in the buds, and then, several days later, boom, the buds pop, and I'm like, they're all like, that stuff is no good. It's filthy, it's no good, it's old, it's ruined, it's all, Spray it at night, there is no return. I've watched mare's tail go down completely and never come back. When Roundup came out, paraquat's business, that was Gramoxone back then at ICI, it was decimated. And yet when they sprayed the Roundup, the control was so. And the poor paraquat guy is losing his market share, he's losing his annual bonuses and everything else. And I said, tell your growers to go out there and spray it late in the evening or very early in the morning before the sun comes up. And because he was much cheaper than the Roundup was back then at $80 to $90 a gallon. And I said, you tell me what happened. He's like, I've never even heard that. I said, you haven't even heard it from your own company? No. Well, when I told him this, it encouraged him. And he went back out, and he came back a year later, and he came in and because I was working out in South Jersey at the time. And he was all smiles, and he came in. He says, "I just want to come in and thank you." He said, "I got one of the highest bonuses ICI has ever put out when I started." Yeah, you think? Yeah, maybe just a dinner or something. No, have a nice day. But I'm just saying, once people they get encouraged and they have some knowledge and they can go forth and make a difference, they do. And boy, I tell you what, he nailed it. And it was funny because it's like, well, do you think people actually have resistance to going out in the dark and spraying chemicals? You do. That's right. It's like, I don't go out
farm for 40 years.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, after we work all day, you ain't gonna get me.
Well, that's what I told
And I'll say this, you're exactly right, because we use paraquat for 20 years on peanuts. And if you do not mix any type of residual control with it, you just go out with the low rates and But if you ever started mixing residual, you were wasting your time, because the plant just wouldn't take it up.
Yeah, well, and sometimes the residuals actually would react with the paraquat.
You say that about the night spraying, and that's a big controversy.
Yeah.
That, some of them say for white mold control, we're better to go at night, and all this, logically, it ain't gonna happen.
The only way it's going to happen, if the pain you're enduring from the loss of the activity is going to be reversed by doing some of the things you got to do to either survive or make a lot more money. That's what's going to happen.
It's hard enough to keep them out of the woods with them high cycles and everything during the day.
More or less now. Yeah. I'm just saying, in theory, when some of the stuff that we're doing, we know how to make them work better, more efficiently, and actually function. And it's just a matter of starting to open, some of those conversations. So with that, I'm already 15 minutes behind, so I got to go look at Taylor's site. So go liquid plant food twice. We didn't catch that one, did we? So agronomy is the study of plants and how they interact to optimize production. I think that's what I'm trying to encourage here to help to understand is we know that for whatever reason, the soil is designed to feed the plant. That's why we put some fertilizer there. But they're not told that the plant is designed to feed the soil in return. There's an interaction of why those happen. And it's the number one reason why the program that you're going to see, some ideas here today, is going to work. If you don't get that, if you think it's just one or the other, you're going to miss it because you're going to run into all kinds of issues through the years that you can't explain. It's like, I don't understand what's going on here. I put fertilizer out here like crazy, and this is the prettiest green grass you've ever seen, but I just can't cut it. I cannot make sod out of this grass. That's because all the tops are growing. You're telling the plant, with the fertilizer program you're using, I'm growing tops. You're not growing roots. So it establishes really well for a grass crop, but it's not sod. You can't cut it. And I think, the question we should be asking is how can I make this exchange work better, faster, more efficiently, knowing that that plant is an energy conversion machine? What pieces of the puzzle in here can we really impact and impact widely, big, make things happen? That's the question.
And I think, with that being said, now would be a good point to just real quick go through the energy that a plant kicks out into its root zone. It's 20%, 25%. The sugars that it makes, it kicks out.
Yeah, 20 to 25% of its food load, it ships to the soil.
So, why in the world would a plant that's, in the heat of the summer in a stressful situation or having to, fight off different things, why is it going to waste and make this energy and then send it out somewhere else? Well, that's because there's a support system in the soil that's not connected to the plant. It's the living biology that's down there. So it's got to feed the biology to keep the biology happy, so the biology can turn around and feed the plant, keep the plant happy. And that's the happy marriage right there. So,
well, if you understand anything about your body, your system, your immune system is controlled by your stomach. It's the microbes in your stomach that communicate the signals through the stomach wall and into the bloodstream to the brain. And it's the stomach that turns the immune system on. And if you understand that, have you ever seen a plant with a stomach? If you do, maybe I'll take pictures. We might make some money, right? There's no stomach, right? Because the stomach is the soil. The soil contains the biology, the same microbes we're talking about that are in your belly that tell you this is a good or a bad situation. That's why when you take antibiotics, where do you normally take them? Orally, and they go where? In the stomach, and when it wipes out the biology, it's like, well, this is kind of a restart. And you got to be careful, especially if you're got a bad disease or something. The doctor's like, maybe you ought to hang out, in the house, don't go around and see people, don't be exposed to stuff, because we're going to shut your immune system down because you're taking antibiotics. And if we've done that to the soil with some bad herbicides and some bad carriers and a lot of bad things, and the soil gets limited in its biology, that plant is trying to communicate with the biology, because the biology being around its roots, that's how it tells it its world is going okay or it's not. And when the biology's gone, it's not. That's why when we knocked out the biology with lots and lots of fertilizer, lots and lots of tillage and other things through the years, it didn't kill it. It just limited the diversity. Well, we all know if that's the case, I only got 15 bugs in my microbes in my stomach. I only got 15 microbes, different kinds. Like, man, I'm kind of susceptible to every little thing comes along here. And it's the same thing in the soil. So when the soil is kicking that food out, it's trying to get some impact back from the microbes, because the plant sends out signals, the microbes receive the signals, and they send the signals back saying, we're here, we're doing this, we're taking care, hey, don't worry about it, everything's fine. That's what it's looking for under that stress. And sometimes it's not getting any return back, and all of a sudden it's like, man, the crop just shuts down or starts getting sick. And it's funny, because then when it starts getting sick, what do? Oh, it's got some fungus. What do? We spray it. But it's funny, if we actually had a lot of biology out there ahead of time, if we're breaking down the thatch with microbes that break down the thatch and accelerate, and the thatch goes away, and the fungal infections that live in the thatch can't live there anymore, and the nutrients are released from the thatch, and it's all right there in the crown, and the biology is a part of that system, because we put in two forms of biology. One to break down the thatch, the other to release nutrients and turn on the immune systems. And it's funny, guys are like, well, when we started using this stuff, we don't seem to spray much anymore. I wonder why. Because if we get sick, if we knock out our immune systems, and we get sick, and we go back to the doctor, what's he do? He gives us something else, or here's another pill. Just take care of the symptom. No. Let's go back and fix the problem. And that's what we're doing here as we start into this. This is a picture. Let's see if this plays. This is a picture.
You'll have to do the skip on the ad thing.
Yeah, we'll do the skip. It's a picture of your heart. This is a LODO plant inside of a fish tank type thing. This is a light on top. Will you see the bubbles coming out? Now they stop. The light turned off, and just that fast, because this is not time lapse. This is real time. The light's going to come back on. So this plant, they just cut the top off the LODO plant in the fish tank, and they shine light on it. Photosynthesis is the process of harvesting that sunlight, bringing it into the plant, turning on the system, making sugar, and releasing oxygen. That's what photosynthesis is. Make glucose sugar in the leaves with all those fancy systems, and release oxygen. Well, look at the oxygen coming out of that plant. Now, what they're going to do is they're going to start slowing. You can't tell, but they're going to cut the light down a little bit. Well, look how the bubbles slow down. It's that instantaneous. So when you realize that, it's like, well, if that's the case, what happens out here on these bright sunny days where everything's going good, and what happens when it's cloudy? What happens when it's dark? What happens in a real dark, cloudy day for a long period of time? Those plants aren't working as hard as they should. So if it's not getting sunlight, it's not making any energy. So as you get into low sunlight conditions, everybody's like, man, color's off in the sun, it's not growing very well. You're tempted to go out there and throw fertilizer to it. Why? It's not even growing. If you're smart, you would throw what? Sugars, fulvic acids, humic acids, energy into the system, because the plant isn't nutrient deficient, it's energy deficient. And by the way, if you throw it in there, it's not necessarily going to immediately color up the crop. What's it going to do? It's going to take that energy and store it away. So, if you're working out there on the golf course, you want pretty grass for the people. But if you're working on a sod farm, sure, you still care about the color of the grass, but the grass isn't ready to be sold yet. We're trying to get it cut, so we're trying to put roots back on it. So in a cloudy year, you need more sugars. Let's see how this works. There we go. So, we start talking about some of these issues. The turf push program. And we're talking about a push because when especially years ago when I first started hard with Kenny, and they had a lot of people trying to figure things out, they wanted to know what they could do to speed this growth up. So we started calling it a push program. There's three things about it. Part one is the foundation, plant nutrition and the health cofactors, what we just kind of went through here over the top. Two, maximize the sugar production. So in that plant that's growing in that fish tank, if you will, what is it we can do to allow that machine to start operating in high gear? And if possible, can we keep it operating in high gear without causing any downside? Because it's always fun to do the upside, but if there's a major downside, we've got to be aware of it, right? Because we don't want it to come back and bite us in the butt. And number three, sustain the growth potential and preserve the sugar level. So it's a multifaceted situation. So the foundation of the turf push program is the Turf Pro at a gallon to the acre. Now, in that, some things to think about. Enzymes to stimulate the native soil organisms. The 4 words of life that we don't understand are carbohydrates, which is a big fancy term for sugar, amino acids, proteins, and enzymes. Who wants to stand up and tell the group what those are? Any volunteers? Do you want me to make it so understandable to you that you can go home and tell your significant other tonight, I now know what those are? Do you want to know that right now so you can talk with them tonight?
Dial it down for me.
What's that?
Dial it down for me.
I thought so. But what I'm saying is we've avoided it in the past because we don't want to understand it entirely. But you can't, moving forward, throw it out because it's something that you have to understand. It's just like this. Sugars are basically carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in combinations. Just simple carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and they make sugar. So glucose is a 6-carbon sugar. It has 6 carbons, it has 12 hydrogens, and it has 12 oxygens. That's sucrose, or glucose. When you start marrying a nitrogen group onto those sugars, you now make amino acids. So now what you've got is you've got an energy backbone with nitrogen stuck on it. Amino acids. And so there are a massive amount of different configurations that you could get. But that's an amino acid. A sugar group with nitrogens stuck on it. So you can imagine if you put that into a plant and it said, I'd really like to have some nitrogen. And you just put it on a sugar backbone. What did you do? Instead of just saying, oh, how about some ammonium nitrate? Or how about some urea or some 28 or 32%, which has got urea and ammonium nitrate in it. And those are all just salts. You put it in the water and they just separate. And here's some ammonia, here's some urea, here's some nitrate. Instead of just putting that out there, you just gave it amino acids and it says, I would love to have this nitrogen, and it clips off the nitrogen, what's left behind? Energy, sugar. And people are like, how in the world does this stuff work? It doesn't make any sense to me. We're not putting on 10s and 20s of pounds. We're only putting on 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 pounds. That's how it works. Because it's like, now, because it's the next step up in the food chain here, if you will, if it needed amino acids, if it needed these amino acids and you just put them on, what kind of energy does it have to spend to make those amino acids when you just put them on? None. So now you got energy. Because here's the next step. From amino acids, you take amino acids and you train them together in different configurations, and that's what we call a protein. So you got sugars, nitrogen on sugars, amino acids. Amino acids together in really strange configurations are proteins. And by the way, 3 essential amino acids, not suggested now, 3 essential amino acids and 3 essential proteins for life to function are sulfur dependent. You're probably asking, Kenny seems to talk a lot about ammonium sulfate, not so much urea, or 28 or 32%. Why is he always talking about ammonium sulfate? The government years ago mandated that sulfur would be removed from the system because they were worried about acid rain. That was their excuse. But when you take sulfur out of a system, it almost looks like you have to question yourself, why would they even take sulfur out of the system? Because if all the people at the top are that stupid that they know when they pull sulfur out what's going to happen to the life force of the planet, is it going to be encouraged or discouraged? Discouraged. Because those were essential, not suggested. Okay? So why would we do that? Because if we need these as essential amino acids and protein, we've got to have the sulfur. And if you understand that we're talking about carbohydrates and now into protein, by the time you balance carbohydrates and protein, that's what grows them, right? So without the proteins, we don't grow. So all the sugar in the world isn't going to make the best roots. Got to have some protein every once in a while. So you got to have pieces of the puzzle. Then you take proteins that are really, really strange in these functions, and you train a bunch of proteins together. Now you got an enzyme. Is this getting any easier to follow? So you got sugars, amino acids, proteins, and enzymes. Everything is getting more and more and more complex, and the enzymes have absolutely specific shapes that they have to be in. And enzymes are designed to build things up in you, in animals, in plants, in nature. They're designed to build things up. And as things fall apart and die, some of them are designed to break things down. So there are all kinds of different specific enzymes that get made. And when we make those enzymes, in order for them to function, they have to have certain micronutrients stuck in certain places on the inside of that fancy enzyme. And if they're not, if you went to all the trouble to build those enzymes out of the system, but you didn't have the micronutrients to deposit in there, they don't work. It's like, oh man, I got all this going on, and I forgot, I got all this energy in this plant. I forgot to put some micronutrients in here, and I wonder if that's my problem. Nitrate reductase. That's how they name these things. There's always an ASC on the end. But nitrate reductase in the world of biochemistry means take a nitrate ion. For those of you who are chemists, that's a nitrogen with 3 oxygens around it. It's been oxidized. Nitrate. Reductase. That means pull off its oxygens and marry on hydrogens in its place. So it takes it from a nitrate ion, rips off its oxygen, and turns it back into an ammonium ion. That enzyme, in order to work, has to have molybdenum. In the corn market today, people are buying this like crazy. Most of them never bought a pound of boron in their life, and they never bought a pound or even an ounce of moly in their life. And all of a sudden, they start putting these stuff in, and the corn goes berserk. All grasses go berserk. Because if you had too much nitrate out there, if you wanted to fix that, if you could get the nitrate reductase enzyme in the system to work, and if it doesn't have enough, it's funny, there's an element there's a product that we sell, we've known it for years, that carries lots of nitrate reductase, and it's called kelp. And it's funny, when you put kelp out there, if you've ever seen it, it's like, man, that kelp seemed to really reduce the stress on that plant. Now, there's all kinds of vitamins and minerals and all kinds of other stuff. But we put the kelp out there, and we throw a little moly with it, and everything goes into the plant system, and the plant says, oh, thank God, finally somebody figured this thing out. You got all this nitrate reductase, you got the moly to make it work, and when you put on some nitrogen, maybe a little less than perfect, because it's sucking up nitrate like it's candy, all of a sudden the plant changes. Because it's like, I'm not growing on nitrate so much anymore. My nitrate reductase enzyme finally is working in my plant again, and I'm putting out roots. Because somebody finally figured out I needed to get off of this nitrate diet and onto an ammonium diet. Because ammonium is what influences reproduction. Nitrate is what causes plants to grow uncontrollably. We think that if we put nitrate into the soil system, that the plant is going to grow like crazy. And it does. But if you are a sod grower of warm season grasses, you're looking to get what on those roots? Rhizomes. Rhizomes are definitively a reproductive structure and have to have ammonium to form. Now you see why we talk about why do we use ammonium sulfate as a fertilizer. We have to have the protein to make the enzymes. We have to have it in an ammonium form to reproduce and make better roots. This is why it's there. It's not because we're just wanting to go out there and buy expensive nitrogen. It's because without the right nitrogen in the right form, the plant simply can't do the job you're calling it to do. That's why when you establish sod on a grass, or on a place, and you don't care if it's just going to become grass, you can do whatever you want to. You can make it grow its tops, and it can have a limited amount of roots, and you can water it all day long if you're a homeowner, and it's like, hey, this is pretty sod, this is pretty grass. But if you're going to cut it, you've got to change the program to the plant and help it understand, oh, I see what you're trying to do here. This is why we're doing these things for you. Please, work with me. I need you. Food sources and stimulants.
I was going to say, all the stuff you just talked about is kind of what Turf Pro is built on. I mean, as you see, most everything he just mentions in those bullet points.
Food sources and stimulants for microorganisms.
soil penetrant to make sure that the stuff gets down in the profile and set up on top. Soluble carbon, which is food source basically for the microbes and the plants. Micronutrients as chelated micronutrients. Chelates meaning it won't interact with the chemistry in the soil and tie up. It'll go into the plant and do its work. And then plant biostimulants to increase the root growth. We're telling it, this is what we want you to do, here's how you're going to do it. And we're going to provide you the things to make it happen. In the Accelerate 50/50, which is the microbes, living microbes, a quart per acre, live microorganisms for thatch degradation and turf growth promotion. This one piece alone has revolutionized how we grow sod down here. Getting rid of thatch, turning it back into available nutrients that don't go to waste, and increase the crown strength and the health by taking away the moisture and the humidity and the disease organisms. It is changing the way people grow grass down here. And it's not just here, it's all over the place. And we're doing it also in the row crops. And as a result, because of where it's at, that's what's really promoting the growth. If we wanted to go into this, which we won't here today, but all those different organisms can be listed, the ones that we're using, and we know everything that they do. So here's the Accelerate, which is the thatch degraders, and here is the Complement, which is the nutrient releasers. And there are columns here, like this one breaks down proteins in the soil. Both of these do proteins. Lipids. This one's releasing phosphate. All these are doing it. This one's making root growth hormone. These aren't all making root growth hormone, so they're going across the page like this. This one's breaking down cellulose. This one's in fixing nitrogen. There are 14 that fix nitrogen naturally in the system. Siderophores to release iron. Ammonifiers taking nitrogen out of the organic matter and putting it into the plant. Urease, which is a nitrogen release system that we actually sometimes we use agrotane. That's a urease inhibitor. So these, if you use a lot of agrotane, they're not going to work because they're trying to make the urease and then you're trying to kill it. Okay, doesn't make it bad or good. That's just the way it is. Sulfur oxidizers, and then stress relievers, or 10 stress relievers, or 11 sulfur oxidizers. So if you were actually using out some flowers of sulfur, it has to be oxidized or turned into sulfate to be available to a plant. So all the sulfur in the world, until it's oxidized, won't go into a plant. So you have all of this stuff going on.
Dan, maybe touch on, so 25 different, like in Accelerate here, there's about 25, I think, on that list.
25 organisms.
Of organisms.
Yeah.
So different microorganisms,
Right.
and then crosses, they're doing these jobs. So you can see how many replicate at the
Is there
top.
one main engine that drives Accelerate toward the thatch degradation?
Is you say is there one main engine?
Yeah, is there all of them?
Well, here's the way it works in the soil. Because we think that organisms only do one thing. Well, that's obviously not the case, right? They got to be versatile. Because if they all just release phosphate, that's all they did, how would they ever get any food? Because everybody would be saying, hey, I can make you phosphate over here. Send me sugars and roots. And they got to be versatile in what they can accomplish. So if for instance here, this one and this one, let's see, this one and this one are releasing or breaking down proteins, and that's all that's going on, is they're breaking down proteins. Well, this one does too, but all of a sudden it's like, well, hey, I can break down lipids. So it's like, hey, you got a little fatty acid left over from the last, or let's say there's a dead possum laying here. I can help you break down the lipids in this old dead possum over here. These other guys, they can't do squat, but just send me some stuff and I'll break down some lipids, make you some more food. They do these things around the root systems. They have a whole library to figure out what signals to send to the plants to say, hey, help me out over here. I'm doing this for you. I'm a sulfur oxidizer. These guys don't do sulfur oxidation. I'll give you this if we need to, but I'll give you sulfur oxidation at the same time. Or that's all I'll do right now is I'll just oxidize sulfur for you. And so he gets food from the roots to get sulfur back inside the plant. That's why diversification in the soil system is important. That's why if you look out here on top of the tees, and we've worked that within an inch of its life for years, and you go 15 to 20 feet right over into the woods, why is it things are going on in the woods that aren't going on in tees? Because there used to be all of these, if you will, in the tees, but now it's down to here, but in the woods it's all here.
You're really making the plant a scavenger.
That's right. And that's what plants are born to do. If you put lots of fertilizer in the soil, they don't scavenge anymore.
Let me ask you this. You talked about the molybdenum, the moly going in. Is that strictly to help with is that what develops those rhizomes for developing the nitrogen on, say, a lagoon?
It helps dramatically. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out how it actually.
Yeah, anything that's leguminous, your peanuts, your soybeans,
your Lespedezas, some of your forages, and even some of your trees, like black locust, alfalfa. Yeah. They have nodules and they rely upon that system.
Right.
So that's why if you haven't been using boron and moly, and that's why we make our boron with moly already in it, because when you understand that the boron is huge in making sugars move around, and moly makes the nitrogen more efficient. That's why you would apply them at the same time. It's like, hey, we do want to move the sugars, and we want to make the nitrogen the right form.
So the moly makes it more efficient.
Moly makes it more efficient. And there is some moly in the system. It's just that in many places it hasn't been applied for years. And so as you've been taking off sod, for instance, moly is it's an anion. So like nitrate and like borate and like sulfate, they all leach. Moly leaches. So over time, if it's been leaching down and you've been cutting off the sod, it gets lower and lower and lower all the time.
Now, if we're adding all these sulfates and they end up getting stored in the soil, how more often are you having to add lime to bring your pH back up?
Yeah, as you bring in, see, is that that's not the next one.
Which one are you looking for, Dan?
Oh,
Didn't we stick it in right
You
there?
talking about the nitrogen slide?
yeah,
Keep going. It's a couple more down. We'll go back to that.
we're getting too far away.
It's fine. Just keep going. You can go back.
Thought we put it in here.
We did.
Yeah, it did not stick.
Good grief. That was a good question, but we're all off center by about 20 slides now. But it's a good point because
Maybe we got the wrong
got
one.
the wrong one.
Let me check.
Here's the point. Once you start putting the sulfate into the system, if you're using ammonium sulfate, when it brings in the ammonium ion, it will kick out hydrogen ion. Okay? Now, if you're just using sulfates in general, sulfates can cause a reduction in pH. But normally it's used in so many different things and it's such a limited factor anymore, the sulfate by itself doesn't typically cause it to really acidify, unless you're putting in hundreds and hundreds of pounds of sulfate. Then it's the ammonium ion that goes with the sulfate that's causing the hydrogen. Because when a plant, and I wish I had an easel pad I could show you, but ammonium ion is an NH4, it's got a positive charge. That's a nitrogen with 4 hydrogens, and hydrogen is the acid, H+. And when it absorbs in as ammonium, in order to stay in an electrical balance, it has to kick out something to keep it balanced. So it kicks out a hydrogen ion. That's acid. So right around the root, the pH is going to be about 4.5, which is good because it's not going to make the whole soil that way. In the short term, it's just going to be around the roots. And as the pH goes way, way down around the roots, the copper, the zinc, the iron, and the manganese are all metals, and they melt. And when they melt, they go into the plant. So you're using ammonium sulfate to change the whole environment that the plant sees.
It's a carrier for your micronutrients.
It's a carrier for micronutrients. Now, if you go to urea, and urea changes over to nitrate, or you just use straight nitrate, when the nitrate ion goes into the plant, it causes it to kick out bicarbonate. Now, if you think about it, it's like, okay, what's that sound like? Bicarbonate of soda, which means what? That's a very high pH, an alkaline material, and around the roots, the pH jumps up to 8.5 to 9. What does that do to the availability of the micronutrients? It causes them to lock down. So now you got a plant that's growing tops, it's looking for all these pieces. You're looking for micronutrients to finish the deal, but you use the wrong nitrogen, so it grows a limited amount of roots. It's still trying to grow the tops, and every little bit it gets is trying to grow the tops and get everything to grow up in the tops, but it's not building any roots anymore. So it's actually a conflicting message. And so it's so funny how we just kind of little by little get in the way of the messaging. We set up one program and we completely turn it around and go backwards with another one. And that's why we always tell people, be careful of the program that you choose. The fertilizer program, because there's 2 meanings for program. The program is what you've always bought from the fertilizer guy. That's a program. People didn't realize that the term program means when you put fertilizer to it, you program the plant to do things. You set it in motion. There's 2 meanings. So be careful of the program that you choose.
There you go, Dan.
All right.
Back.
So if you see that, what they did, this study was done in 1996 by Heckman at Penn State. But what they used was a pH indicator. So in the pH indicator, when they put it in the soil,
When the pH is very acidic, it turns yellow, and in this case, it was down to about 4.5. When it's very alkaline, up in the 8s or 9s, it turns pink. And so when they fed grass, because this is all done on sod, when they fed grass, nitrate nitrogen, or things that would turn to, like urea, if it's not stabilized, if it goes out in the field, 72 hours, a lot of it's already turned to urea, or to nitrate. And if it goes in as nitrate, this happens. So, and the other part of it's important down here, it's like an acidic rhizosphere being the area where the roots are, an acidic rhizosphere suppresses many soil-borne diseases and makes micronutrients more available. That's what they started finding is when they went to ammonium sulfate to feed these. This was all done, like I said, at Penn State, but they followed up on it at Rutgers. They started using ammonium sulfate. It's like, hey, our fungicide has dropped. Didn't cut them out completely, just dropped them way down because, oh my gosh, we acidified that system. Ammonium is the preferable form of nitrogen for amino acid formation, and it shifts the ecology by selectively feeding the beneficial microbes because the bad guy microbes like the nitrate, and the good guy microbes like the ammonia. So it's a thought out system. It's not just, wow, it seems like ammonium sulfate is the most expensive nitrogen we can buy. But do you realize when you used it, you just bought sulfur, you just released micronutrients, you just shut down a lot of bad guy microbes, and you help the plant make more amino acids. That's hard when it's like, oh, it's just an input. It's hard to get across to people. It's like, oh, this is no normal input. Ammonium sulfate feeds both the plant and the soil because the microbes love the stuff. So it's a good question. And what's nice about it is if it's in a normal cycle, if you've cut the sod and you don't have lime out there, you better get it out there. Because, the thing is, if we limit the amount of lime we put on here, every time we're cutting, if we need to have that lime, we've got to have it to help offset a little bit of this. But the biggest thing is, all the cells in these roots that you're trying to expand, every one of them has to have boatloads of calcium. So if you don't have calcium in there, if you cut down into the subsoil and your pH is down into the 4s or low 5s and you don't have calcium, the biology doesn't work and the roots don't grow. Ran into this at Werner's years ago. I said, when was the last time you took a 1-inch sample to check what your system was actually functioning on? Well, I've never heard of such a thing. The biologicals wouldn't work. They were spraying fungicides like it was candy. The roots wouldn't grow. They couldn't get this sod kick in here for squat. pH came back at 4.2, 20% calcium. Put 1 ton of lime out there in that particular situation because it was so severe, just immediately the fungicide shut off. Biologicals started working like a rocket. Plants took off and away they went. Can't short yourself, but if you know that you're going to cut that and give it to the end user, that's fine. You can limit how much you put out there, but don't try to go without it. That's a no-no.